Wait, are you are you gonna count me in? Whatever. I'm just gonna go for it. Welcome to the Queen's Lead podcast. I'm your host, Amy Singleton, and as a child of the 80s, I'd love to say queens rule, but they don't. Queens lead. Being a queen means you are worthy to be a leader of people. The guests on our show do exactly that. They are leading the way in their businesses, families, and communities. And they're taking their rightful place in the spotlight, leading and inspiring the developing queens in all of us. Welcome to the Queen's Lead podcast.
Now here's your host, Amy Singleton, the queen of realness, leading conversations about business, life, and the real shit you want to know.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Queen's Lead podcast. I'm your host, Amy Singleton, and today we are joined by my friend, Krys Marazzi. Krys is like the definition of an entrepreneur. I don't know if there's a thing she doesn't do. She's a financial advisor. She owns a motorcycle store. She's got some other health and wellness things going on. She hosts a podcast as well, a local podcast with another Okie here in Oklahoma. So I'm going to let her tell more about who she is. So welcome, Krys.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are so happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, all of those millions of things. I don't know how you keep up.
I don't know how I keep up either. So, I started off wanting to help people, and it just kind of all branched out. Whenever I saw a need for something, I kind of just led myself in that direction. And then it would end up into either a business of some sort or an adventure of some sort, underneath another business, right? So yeah. I do have a women's empowerment group that's not technically a business, but it's ran underneath, a business that I have. So yeah, I just try to connect people and do what I can to help when they need it.
Yeah. So you're from Oklahoma?
I am actually from Texas. I moved to Oklahoma 21 years ago 22 years ago when my son was born. He just had a birthday. So when he was a baby, born in June, and then September I was here. By September I was here. So
yeah. And what brought you from Texas to Oklahoma?
The baby. So my oldest son, I had a rough pregnancy to get started. Well, the pregnancy itself was okay, but the relationship situation with his sperm donor, right? Or his donor, I guess.
Lots of us have those sperm donors. It's great.
Right, to be a little bit more politically correct. But, so his donor, and he was not really in the picture. In fact, he was in prison at the time. And so I was still trying to make things work because I have always been that person that gives second chances. I did love him. And he was obviously the father of my son. And I've always been a fixer. So I thought, well, maybe we can make this work. And so I decided that Texas was not a good place for him to be, our hometown. So I picked up and moved to Oklahoma. And then I told him that he would have the opportunity to come here when he was released, and we would try to build a life together. And my sister lived here, and her husband is military. And so they were stationed here from the base, and I moved here. One, it was cheap babysitting. Two, I had this support system, but I was leaving the rest of my family. And three, it was a fresh start, and for him and myself as well, because we obviously all had the same connections, and those connections didn't need to be in my son's life. And there were some other things going on that I needed to shield my oldest from on my side. So I thought a different state was going to be the best option for him, and it turned out it was. And so that's why we migrated this way.
I love it.
But when I moved here, I was actually homeless. I didn't have a home. And it was just me and him. And my sister graciously let us stay on her couch basically. There was bunk beds for one of her kids, and we would stay there on the couch, sometimes an air mattress. And I had, like I said, he was an infant. He was only a couple months old. And we moved here, and I had to figure out something pretty quickly because I had no home. I had, in fact, when I moved here, we didn't even have clothes for him. So
Oh.
I had a stockpile of some things that I tried to save. And when my ex went to prison, his brother came in and took everything and stole all of our clothes. My dog took
Oh my
everything. And
gosh.
so when I picked up and moved here, I literally had my truck and my child and a few pair of clothing for him and myself. But for the most part, we had nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It's been an interesting
That's
road.
incredible. That's incredible. And
Yeah.
look where you are now. So how did you make the journey from homeless, clothesless nearly, and naked and homeless, to financial advisor and business owner and all of these queenly, amazing, leaderly things you do now? Like, I know that does not happen overnight. That starts with a single step. Do you remember what that
It
what
does
that
not.
first one was?
Yeah, so it was actually it's been a 22-year journey. And so whenever I didn't have, I had nothing. And just full transparency here, my ex got me into some trouble as well. So not only did I come here with nothing, I also came with a criminal record. And so
Yeah.
I had to do an expungement and all of those things, but it's harder to get hired, right, without with
Yeah.
that criminal record. And that is something that's always been passionate for me, that, great that they give us a second chance, but also if we walk out with that criminal record, then it is difficult still to get, jobs and income and get out of that.
Impossible. Nearly
Yes.
impossible. My brother-in-law is a felon and tried to get it expunged this last year after serving his full sentence, and they still would not allow him. So he continues to live his life it's a very, very difficult process, even when you've completely paid and, and whatever, even guilty or not
Mhm.
guilty, it's a difficult
Sure.
life. Hmm.
Sure. And I was lucky on that aspect because my, I was, a woman. So that's number one. And number two, I had a baby. And number three, I hadn't even had a speeding ticket. So
Yeah.
I had a very, very clean record when all of this happened. And so they did give me another chance, but I had to do 3 years of parole. And it was very trying with a baby by myself, and in a whole new state with nobody that I knew, with no job, no house, no nothing. So
Yeah.
I had to find a job. And so I found a job at a cell phone company because I just needed one. And I finally found somebody that would hire me. And so I worked it was called Challenger Wireless, which is no longer in business. And thank goodness that they gave me the opportunity, toxic environment, but they gave me the opportunity to get started. And in the May 3rd, 2003 tornado, my son had just, he wasn't even a year old. And I got hit by that tornado. And so I had to start over again. We had one room. So the only thing that made it out of that tornado were my shot glasses, which thank goodness for that, right?
Cheers.
But the only thing, cheers to that. The only thing that made it out of the house was shot glasses and his crib. Everything else was gone. So in my truck. And I left work. I come from Wichita Falls, which we have tornadoes there, but they've really had one massive one. And when the sirens go off, it's kind of like, and it's kind of like, it's like that here too, where they're just like, okay, well,
Yeah.
that just kind of happens.
Yeah.
It's like not a big
Right.
deal. Everybody, yeah. So everybody was like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm driving home and my sister has my son, and they're like possible touchdown southwest on West Penn. So I turn around towards Penn and I look, and I'm stuck in traffic and I can see it. And I can see the roofs flying around in it. And I'm like, this is not good, obviously. And so I call my sister and I'm like, you got to get the boys in the bathtub right now. Cause she had she had two boys at the time, herself. And so, I luckily, because I knew I didn't have time to get into my home, which was across the street, to unlock the door and whatnot, but I knew there was no room in her bathroom for me. So luckily, I made the decision to go to her house, and we ran inside and got into the bathtub. And then within just a few seconds, the house was shaking. And I mean, it was like literally I had my truck floored and I was going about 35 miles an hour. So it was that close to where my truck was feeling the suction. And we survived, but my house across the street did not. And her house had damage, but that's how those tornadoes work, right? So it picks and chooses what it does. Let's take it personally, but
right.
So we had to start over again. And so I went from the cell phone company into trying to find another position. There was a few other things that happened in the meantime, but in that time frame, I went and worked for the House of Kawasaki, which is where I work now, or where what we are co-owners of. And I went and worked there for 3 years and got into finance there. And so that was it's a different type of finance. It's, the car industry, basically auto industry. And that's where my auto industry started, was there. And I learned how to do bank loans and finance. And at the time, not that same ex, I didn't pick really great people to be in my life. So the ex before that, he had ruined my credit. And so I will tell whoever is listening, never co-sign for anyone's account, really anyone, but outside of your, spouse and your children. And like, I even keep our finances pretty separate now because I just don't want to go through that again. But yeah, so I had added him as a authorized user. So not even a co-signer, as an authorized user. And then when his dad passed away, and I paid for his funeral at 18 years old. And so that was hit. Yeah. Which obviously I didn't realize it until they were past due and I was getting those bills in the mail. Yeah, so I came to Oklahoma with a lot of baggage, but that's really where I kind of started in that finance industry, was House of Kawasaki, and then I went into the auto industry, and then just kind of stair step from there into looking for different avenues of finance industry. And this is obviously a completely different level, but what I'm able to do is help clients that come to me with so many different areas of their life, because I have rebuilt my credit. I have, I'm not a credit repair by any means, and I don't have the means to pull your credit. But if you bring me your credit report, we can talk about that, and I can give you pointers on what to do, and that's a free service, right? Versus having to pay for that. But you have to do the legwork, right? And so buying vehicles, things of that have helped clients with their vehicle purchases and things of that nature. So it's all actually tied in together. And at one time I went to school and went and got my bachelor's and master's degree while working 12 hours a day with a newborn, which is my youngest, and went to night school. And so my degrees are not actually in finance, which is the funniest thing, but it actually all ties together because it's law. And so the laws tie in together with the finance aspect of what I do now. So that's kind of in a very nutshell of how I got where I am, but there's a lot more deep discussion that involved in those middle.
Yeah, and in all that in between, there's so much more to hear and to pick up on. But did I lose you? Oh no, I got you. I couldn't tell if my earbud went off.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I just love that you're giving, I think you and I are really similar in the fact that we like to give other people permission to do the thing or be the person
Mhm.
that they really are made to be, right? Because so many things in our lives can hold us back. Like, well, I'm a felon, or I have terrible credit, or no one in my family, ever owned a business, or, for me, like I was an addict, or I'm all of these things and all these labels we put on ourselves, and you're not only
Right.
giving permission to other people to rip those things off, but like, how did you, was there someone in your life? Was it just your own mental fortitude that allowed you that permission to push forward and keep leaning into what you were doing?
Yeah, so really it was a deficit of what I had in my life. And whenever, if you're pregnant and you're craving dirt, right, it's because you're missing a vitamin in your body, right? And that's
That's
what
right.
that
Yeah.
is, right? It's not because you enjoy dirt. And so it's the same thing with this and how I went forward into who I am as basically, I guess, my personal brand is because I had a deficit in my life of people that maybe the support I did have more support than some people have, right? I had my sister that watched my kid and things like that. Like I wouldn't be able to work 12 hours a day and use a daycare.
Yeah.
So I did
Mhm.
have support. So don't get me wrong. And I'm very grateful for that. But there was a lot of emotional support that I did not have.
Yeah.
And there, that started from when I was little. My dad, who I call my dad, he passed away when I was 6. And we had to learn a whole new life at 6 years old. And I had to emotionally start taking care of myself at 6 years
Mhm.
old. And so my sister is 7 years older than me. And my stepdad, bless his soul, he was not loved and he by his parents. And so he taught me a lot of things of how to be a really good parent. But some of that was because of the lack of what I had. And I just knew what I needed growing up and as a teenager and as a young adult and as a mother and as a business owner. I knew what I needed. And so I do my best to provide that for other people because everybody should have somebody that
Yeah.
they can call. And that's how my female group, it's called, people call it We Fit, but it's really just fit. I originally put the W in front of it because I was hoping to find a male that would do a male side so that
Mm.
everybody had a comfortable space to talk. So my personal page kind of works for everybody, males as well. And then the We Fit is just women. And then
Mhm.
FIT stands for Friendship is Therapy. Um, and that originated because I went to visit my stepdad um, he had dementia. And so he was in a, private room and he was just a shell of a person. And we went through some trials, right? But dementia is really hard to watch people go through Alzheimer's and all of that because they lose who they are. And he was so independent. And he taught me a lot about running, like owning a business and how work ethic. He always told me, he said, you be the first one there and the last one to leave. And always. And so I've always done that. And because that's what he told me takes success is what
Yeah.
I do. And that's why, I have a different ethic sometimes than other people, and it's, I've always put my passion into what I do, what I did, which sometimes caused a problem.
Can you say that again? You just cut out during that little
But when
bit.
I
Your
said, yeah,
internet
so
seems to be
sometimes
lagging a little bit.
I,
Mine is.
is it,
Yeah.
do I need to try to do a different connection?
If you've got one, you might try
If I
it.
do a different connection, yeah, if I do a different one, it's going to disconnect us though.
Oh, is it gonna cut us completely off?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but I definitely can give it a shot, but I have to,
Well, we can, it's fine. I mean,
let's see.
we edit this, so it's, go ahead and try it, because you keep lagging
Okay.
and I don't want you to have to keep re-saying what you're saying. See if it kicks us out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
So yeah, so I was just saying that, I don't know, what was I saying?
About your stepdad, when you were visiting him with the
Um,
dementia and how, I think you were going to say something about friendship.
oh yeah, so when I was visiting him in the, what am I trying to say? Oh boy, words, right?
Nursing home?
Do we need
Like a
them?
assisted
I guess on
living?
the podcast. Yes, assisted living. I don't know why I had a mental break there, but so when he was in the assisted living, he was just a shell of a person, right? And it's like I saw him as this headstrong person that could do really anything. And he had built a business as well. And he told me, you're the first one there, you're the last one to leave. And he built that work ethic in me, beat it into me, honestly. Um, and so when I left, when I was there, I had no one to call, right? I don't have a lot of friends. So I created, actually, I don't know if you've had her on, but Brandy Gilstrap. So
Yeah.
yes. So she had a podcast and she interviewed Amanda Graves, and she and I connected. Amanda and I had connected because of Brandy's podcast on Facebook. And so for some reason, because her story resonated with me, I messaged her, but I've never met her in person. And she and I started talking. And I was like, you know what? This is what people need. So I created the WeFit or the FIT, Friendship is Therapy, female group, to be able to empower women and have a space where people could find somebody, find their buddy, and that they could talk to in the event that thing, goes awry in their life and they need somebody immediately, right?
Yeah.
But then there's no pressure to keep up that relationship. So, it's great if people do, but it's not necessary to be able to find that what you need in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So tell me, I was going to ask if you had an example in your life of someone that was an entrepreneur. It sounds like your stepdad. That was it, right?
Yeah.
What
So
was what was that like?
he was so he owned a car dealership and he built it from the ground up. And back then it's a little different because you could just walk in and with a handshake to a bank and
Right.
the bank owner and you get a loan, right? So it's a little different
Yeah.
now, but he definitely taught me my work ethic, and he did that through chores and maybe a little bit harsher than he should have, right, in some of those
Mm-hmm.
aspects. But I am not scared to roll my sleeves up and do anything. Last night we moved a safe. My husband and I moved this big,
Wow.
massive safe. But we don't have anyone to call on to help us. So it's just me and him against the world, and I have to be as strong as he needs me to be in the moments that he needs me to be. And
Yeah.
so that is something that, I didn't just look at it and be like, I can't do this because, I have all these, going back problems and issues and whatever. And I'm a girl, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's roll it up and give it a shot and let me see what I
That's
can make
right.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was even like, I told him, I was like, I'm so proud of myself, because he was like, you're not gonna be able to help. And I'm like, oh, I think I can help. Like,
Oh, that's why you were able to do it, because he told you couldn't do it. That's awesome.
right. Yeah, definitely.
So it's
And
pretty natural that you
that is
ended
my,
up at a dealership then, after having kind of grown up around that, you ended up at House of Kawasaki. How did the ownership bit come in there?
well, that's really my husband. So I would love to say
Okay.
that, well, other than me being, the person behind him, keeping
You
him
married the
upright.
owner?
Um,
Did you marry the owner? Did you fall in love
no,
with your
no, 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 no,
coworker?
no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, I did fall in love with my coworker. So I met him in 2006 when I worked there, and I was infatuated, and he was the guy that didn't really necessarily want the family and all the things. Like, here I am with kids, dogs, cats, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and so, but he was just a mechanic at the time, but he's worked there since he was 14 years old,
Wow.
and that is a family-owned business. And so he's basically family, even though he was an employee. And it just happened naturally because they needed somebody to step up in certain roles. And, I would like to say that it was all me, but it's not. But it was me, saying, hey, you need to step up into this role. You need to raise your hand.
Yeah.
And he, like, originally it was a service manager, and he's like, I just don't want to deal with customers. I don't want to deal with customer service. And I'm like, you need to raise your hand and do it temporarily, see what it's like. And if you don't like it, then fine. But we needed the money. We're a young couple. I was like, you've been there long enough to where you should be able to do this naturally. And he
Yeah.
did, and he nailed it. And that's all him. But
That's awesome.
yeah, and so that's kind of how that worked, is just being in basically the right place at the right time. But the true American dream, he's worked there since he was 14 years old, and he
Yeah.
started by taking out the trash. Mhm.
Yeah. And worked his way up to
Yeah,
ownership. That's incredible.
that's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, when did you branch off and start with the financial advising? Because that's, I mean, I would say if you have the main business, your main business is that you're a financial advisor, correct? The main
Absolutely,
thing,
absolutely.
the thing that pays the
Abs-
bills. Everything else is for
right,
fun and all these other stuff, right? Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, the other stuff is more of a philanthropy situation. I don't really
Yeah.
make enough of that to sustain anything, right? It's really because I'm
Yeah.
giving back. But
Mhm.
yes, my main position is as a financial advisor. And I started that because, like I said, I was in the car business in the finance industry, and I wanted to do something different. The car business and I do not align. I was good at it. And I was really good at getting the banks to take care of the consumer. But the car dealerships are really all about just making money, right? And I like to
Yeah.
make money, but I think there's a fine line between making money and screwing people over, right? So,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. So we didn't align on our moral aspect of that. And so there were plenty of times that things were happening, and I would take a stand and being a own, especially at that time, there was hardly any females in the industry.
Yeah.
There
I
was
bet.
Yeah, there were several times that I was sat down and told. So we had this at one of the places. They had this red carpet event, and the places had 13 stores, so 300 plus salespeople. And it was my first year in the car industry, and the top three salespeople, you had to hit all these certain points. There's multiple points you had to hit, and if you hit all 3 points, you got to stand on stage. The top three people, and then the top person won a award. And I was the only female to ever stand on stage. They have discontinued it now. It was my
Wow.
very first year. I got second out of three. So out of I guess technically out of over 300 employees, I was second in not just units sold, but there's multiple things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you got to sign the surfboard, and it was like this whole thing. Pretty excited about that. And then I was sat down afterwards and told that that would never happen again, because they would see to it because I was a female.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So things like that, right? I had scissors held to my hair and called the C word. Um, there were a lot of situations in the car industry that just didn't align with me. So back to the point is I went into the finance department at the car industry, and I really liked that. But then also it was still the same thing where it was a moral aspect as far as, they're walking around, oh, I, 6 pounded people. And I'm just like, it's not necessary, right? In fact,
Yeah.
it really is actually a detriment to the trade cycle and your repeat customers, which is going to slow your business over time. And
Mhm.
they didn't they didn't want to align with me on that. And like I said before, am big on treating a company like it's mine versus just being an employee.
Yeah.
And I guess it's really my role there, right? Is because I was not a manager. I mean, I was a finance manager, but I was not, and even as assistant director, you don't really have a lot of say so in that. And I'm like, I can run, like, I'm laying this out for them and I'm like, this is how we make more money and have happy customers. And they just wouldn't even entertain the thought process. And I kept
Oh my
telling
gosh.
them, I said, and I can feel it in my gut. And it turned out it was COVID, which, I mean, I don't know that I knew that that was what it was, but I told them that they needed to restructure the way that they do things because I just felt it in my gut something was going to happen. I really thought it was going to be when Carvana came into town with
Mm-hmm.
the, and
Yeah.
so it might have just been coincidence, but either way, they needed to restructure and they should have taken my advice. But then that's
Yeah.
when I was like, I can run a business. I can do this. This is like, I am destined to be a leader. I'm destined to run businesses. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm
Yeah.
really wasting here. Um,
God. And this was
and so,
not, this was at a different dealership, not the Kawasaki dealership, right? This was a
no,
traditional car dealership. Yeah. That's what I thought.
correct.
It's so
Yeah.
incredible. I was just having the very similar conversation with my therapist right before you and I hopped on this podcast. Yes, I have a therapist. I am down to once a month, but all of you probably need one too. So don't judge me. We need the therapy.
Wait, were you doing therapy because you were about to talk to me?
No. This is just long. Oh, we're still working through childhood traumas over here, girl. It's fine.
I'm just kidding.
We were talking about that, like the imposter syndrome that is constantly seeping into business owners and stuff. But there's a point. I was recently in a room. This is what I was telling her. I was like, I was in this room with all of these very successful entrepreneurs, right? And I'm thinking like, I have something to learn here. Like there is something, and I'm not trying to be like snooty or elitist, but I'm just going, as they started to talk and share, I was like, you're not already doing this. You're not already working on that mindset piece. You're not already in therapy. You don't exercise. You don't
Yes.
like their mindset, their skill set was so far, and like they're so far beyond me in business, some of them, but I'm so far beyond them in these other areas that I'm like, I can't help but succeed. If you guys were already doing these other things to care for yourself and to care for your team and to have the right attitude and culture and the things you're talking about, that long-term play, they had these other things in mind, like how much more successful they would be. But I constantly discount myself when I'm in those rooms. And then when I'm there, I think, no, wait a minute. I can do this. Like I can do this business. I can do this shit better than they're doing it. Let's go. So I'm so
Absolutely.
glad you were there and made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, and I feel the same way. And then sometimes I struggle with those feelings, right? Because I'm like, same thing. I don't want to be snooty, but in my head, I'm like, how this is common sense to me. And
Right.
that's where it goes back to, was it learned or were you a born leader, right? And I don't really know the answer to that. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but I'm like, how do you not already know these processes? I knew that when I had a lemonade stand. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not know this? I had that same issue and then you feel a little guilty about it, but it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. You're like, but I can do this thing, right? So you did the thing. So you went out and decided to start have your very own business, financial advising people. And that's been how long now?
I've been at Edward Jones for a little over 5 years. Yeah. So
Yeah.
love it. It's, I help other people's dreams come true. And I don't know of another rewarding job than that, right? So,
Yeah.
and my favorites are the younger ones, just because we get to sit down and plan out their whole life and they get to
Right.
see what county interest and all the things does for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just absolutely love it. I go to junior highs and teach, what I'm authorized to teach. I can't,
Right.
I'm so limited in this industry and that frustrates me a little bit. That would be the only complaint that I really have is just the limitations that we get put on us, just from the federal government, not, necessarily Edward Jones
Yeah.
themselves, but because I want to tell everybody, I want to teach them all. I want everyone to know and because we don't know what we don't know, and we can't better our lives if we don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And
So
I mean, I just know that so many, we don't grow up, at least around here. I did not grow up learning about money. That was a taboo subject. It's not something you talked about. It was rude to ask someone how much they paid for their new car or their new house or what the interest rate was. Like, not only do we not talk about it within our own families or our own marriages, we don't talk about it with our friends either. So I love that. I feel like you are constantly normalizing the conversation around money. And especially like I know I'm certain he hasn't come to see you, but I have high hopes for my son, Brady. Not that he would ever listen to this. Go talk to Krys. Like, get your crap set up now. Do it now. You can be a millionaire by the time you're 40, kid, and not, starting late in life like so many of us did.
Absolutely.
So to the extent that you can, what is the advice that you give? First, I want to hear for the parents, like the parents of kids that are coming up through junior high school, those ones that you love. Like, how can a parent, even in our ignorance, potentially open up that conversation about money with our kid?
Sure. So with my youngest, even when he got paid cash for his chores, and I fully believe you have them do chores and they get paid. And if they don't do their chores, you take it back, like you take it away, or you have a running total on a board somewhere that they know like what they're going to get paid for the week. With my youngest, he has a lawn mowing business. Of course, he can't drive, so he only does a few lawns. And then he kind of helps with my social media a little bit. But if he doesn't get up and go to work that day, he gets docked for that day. And on top of that, we create a 401k type structure where if he says, I want to contribute $3 to my IRA, I match that as his employer, even though it's not like under employer. Yeah. But just to keep so that he understands and plants that seed that whenever he goes out and somebody mentions a 401k, he's gonna like, oh, I know what that means. And and then on top of that, when he got paid cash, we had a check register, and those are a thing that nobody uses anymore. But
I got one right here. I'm old.
Check register. Yeah. And so I made him keep track of his cash and what he spent it on and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you do have, as a parent, have a financial advisor, ask your financial advisor if they can set up a meeting with just and I would say you'd start about 10 to 12, and set up a 10 to 12-year-old meeting with, your child. And if they do have accounts, I said, yeah, if your kid does have an account, you set up a meeting, you go over those accounts with them. And I have games that I will play with the children as well, if their parents want to do that. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. We recently bought, is it Kawasaki has a game. It's like, I forget what it's called now. It's kind of like Monopoly. But it's like a finance game, like the game of life, but finance. It's pretty fun. I've only gotten one couple to play it with Joseph and I, so maybe you guys want to play it. They're like, that's boring. That's a financial game. I thought it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
there's one called the Rat Race.
Oh, that's what it is. It's Rat Race. Yeah. Rat Race. That's what it was. It's good.
Yeah.
It was fun. I liked it. So, okay. Then what do business owners need to know about finance? What is it that like business owners miss so often? And I know one big thing business owners miss when they first get started off is like having everything commingled, right? Like our personal and no actual business account. That's a huge deal. But beyond that.
Yeah. So hire in professionals so they can help show you how to do your accounting, how you can separate your cash flow, so you're not commingling money, and keep really good receipts, right? And that's really the biggest part. But then outside of that, your cash flow should be making money for you, even if it's cash flow. You need something that it's going to go into and make some type of income while it sits there until you need it. And it may take an extra step, but that extra step is going to make you money. And that money then makes more money. And that's what we're being a business, an owner for, an entrepreneur for, is to make money. So stop crippling yourself. And then if you're paying into taxes, right, get with a professional and find out whether that's a tax accountant, whether that is a financial advisor, whether that's an account, whatever it is. Find somebody that is going to answer your questions on how to minimize your tax implications, because that is a big one. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're just going to give it to the federal government. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I work hard for my money and I don't want to give it. I want to give as little as possible to the feds. So that's the way it is.
And, you hear constantly people, middle class people saying it's these rich and elite that don't have to pay taxes. Well, those same rules are applicable to you. You just have to be with a professional that can help you to implement those rules as to the extent you can take advantage of them, right? But when we don't seek professional help, well, how the hell are we supposed to know? Because I'm sure that book is that thick.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, most of those people, some of them were born into money, but a lot of them learned how, and they have to learn how to keep it. So if you're making tons and tons and tons of money, even if you're born into it, then you still are going to be paying in tons and tons and tons of taxes unless you know strategy to be able to minimize that, to set yourself up. And sometimes it's you're setting yourself up for later with that money, but I would rather get it later than pay it in and just lose it. So
right, 100%.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's all kinds of stuff.
Sorry. So
bless you.
Who is? Thank you. So talk about, like, who is it that you work best with? I know I already heard you say young people. And that's rare, because a lot of financial advisors are like, wait till you got $1 million, then come see me. And I think that's a big misconception among just people that think we have to have this big wad of money before we can even make a phone call or walk through your door. So outside of kids and, teens growing up, who's in a good position to meet with you now if they have questions about just their finances and what's possible?
Yeah, so I have several different niches. Like I said, the younger ones are my favorite, but obviously I'm also a business and I have to pay my bills. So, the higher net worth people that really want to work on their finances. So you have higher net worth people that are just like, I still don't want to do that. And I won't answer the phone and I won't do the reviews and I won't do the things that are necessary to get us to that point. That's not really my cup of tea. My cup of tea are people that want to do the planning, that want to do the forward-looking calculators, and that really have goals that are in mind. And we do a lot of that goal planning. You don't have to have those goals before you get here. We will do that goal planning here, and we will also talk about the psychology of money and why you think the things that you think, because some people, it comes from how they were brought up. Like, either you don't talk about money, like you had said, or maybe their parents, like your parents smoke, right? Well, you're either going to smoke a lot or you're not going to smoke at all. Typically, it's usually one of the two. But why do we think that way? And same thing with money. Either if your parents spend a lot and they spent every dime that they have, maybe that is why you're scared to spend a dime. Or maybe it's because, or maybe now you're spending all of your money because that's how you were taught. And we've got to figure out what your mindset is so we can get into that mindset of money. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So starting off with the mindset is, I heard someone on a podcast recently talking about how her father was a CPA or a financial advisor. And even all through elementary school, like every Thursday night, they had their money meeting. And the father would literally pull out the bills and talk about, they had this like a spreadsheet on a poster board, but he would say, here's our light bill and here's how much that comes out of what mommy and daddy make. And here is the vacation bill. And if we can make this bill less, we can make this column more. And then we get vacations. And it blew her mind. She'd go to elementary, like, hey, did y'all have your money meeting last night? People are like, what's a money meeting? Like, and she was doing budgeting in elementary school. And that blew my mind, because not something that I would ever in a million, brilliant, right? Like, that was not the extent of bills like that. I got to watch my mama sit at the bar and cry over the checkbook, because there wasn't enough, and so it's just astonishing to me, our backgrounds and how how differently we approach money based on how we were raised. And I think it's time really to demolish the shame that surrounds it and just get
Sure.
the education that we need. Like, we're all coming from different places and we're all in this race together. Why not hire a professional that's willing to help you, that's approachable? I feel like that's the best part about you, is you're so down to earth and not going to judge anybody for wherever they are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, because I've been in all the spots. I've been spots. And that's one of the reasons that I got into this business to begin with, is because I had to fix my own thing. I had HELP syndrome with my youngest, and
Mm,
we walked out of that hospital with a $40,000. So it was a $400,000 bill, and that's what we had to pay that year, was $40,000. And I had ended up, I lost my job because of the pregnancy complications. And it was the whole thing. And there were times that I had to do secret shopping with pizzas, I worked at a time. Like, I've been in all of the positions. But like I said, going back to the perfect client, is no matter how much money you have or don't have, you have to be willing to do the work and put in the effort and take the advice. And not that you have to listen to me, but that we work through that together and we come up with a plan together and you stay on that plan. And that's
yeah.
really the biggest thing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. You're incredible, man. Thank you so much for being. I can't. This time is like, I'm looking at my calendar or my thing. It's already almost 5 till. This time has flown by. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you? And we didn't even mention Veterans for Life. Like, she's also involved in a nonprofit and so much else. What else do you want people to know about you, Krys?
Well, I mean, the Veterans for Life, that's something that's also one of my niches for, that's kind of how all of that came into play, is because the military comes out of the military. They don't know what to do with their TSPs. They don't know what to do with all of those things. And so that was kind of my niche. And then I met Brian Paul on Facebook, and he owned Veterans for Life, or founded Veterans for Life, which helps mental health, which is kind of the Marazzi solutions aspect of it. And he helps people with the mental health aspect find, and PTSD and addictions and those types of things, find their people and resources to connect them. And then we help pay their deductibles. So when I found that out, I was like, oh yeah, let me get in here. And I was really excited about that. Well, then he was like asking me questions on like structure and things. And then it just became a thing. And then we became kind of a partnership of sorts. And so it became this big passion for me to help first responders. It's not just military, it's all first responders, find the help that they need for their mental health. And then if they do want help on the other aspect, I'm there for them. But that's not what I'm there to do. We don't even really talk about that. It's more of just finding the resources to get these people help that they need, because they go through some major stress as first responders, things that we don't understand as just regular civilians. And I appreciate that. And that's the only way I know how to give back as a civilian, is to just do that for them. And so I would say that. And then, with my female group, we do it. I work with another girl for the podcast, and she's really involved into, which is called Untamed Psyche. And we've had on the Veterans for Life, we've had on, we've done addiction podcasts, and then we help those small businesses. We connect them to the community and help get their name out there and do like a little bit of PR for them. All of that comes complimentary. We don't charge for that. And so that falls kind of under that Marazzi Solutions philanthropy aspect, which has started as a wellness situation with my vitamin supplements through Thrive and things of that nature. But then it became so much more, and kind of housed the women's empowerment We Fit group that does events. So I do a lot of community events, and like we're doing this will air afterwards. So, which is really sad, but we're doing a Queen's Gambit retreat, which Amy is a big sponsor for, so we appreciate that. But without the sponsors, we couldn't really make these things happen. But the swag bags are gonna end up being over a $200 value. And I do it at no cost. I put these things together in these events and I don't charge for those. I mean, obviously they have to pay their portion, but it's divided up among the girls. We go and we have a good time and we build these connections together. And that's what I feel like. Connections are like a net, right? So like if you have a net and there's not enough rope to make this net, everything's going to fall through, nothing gets caught. But if you and I have a connection and we have a strong connection, and then we bring somebody else and we have another strong connection, now all of a sudden your net has no holes and it's catching a whole lot more things. And that's just
I love
kind
that.
of my
That's it. You're a fisher of men
So
and
that's
women.
it.
You're bringing us all together. It's so true. It takes a
Yeah.
community. You know, feeling alone in business is not a new thing to anybody. It's tough. So thank you so much for providing so many spaces for
Yeah.
people to connect and gather and make that net around us. I love it. I will put
Yeah. Well,
Krys's link. There's a lot of different places you can find her, as you've heard today. So we're going to put her main link there in the show notes, so you guys can go and connect with her in any which way that it makes sense for you. So Krys, thank you for being my guest today, and thank you for being a queen that leads.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
The Queen's Lead podcast is recorded worldwide and produced by the kick-ass media team at the Height Digital home base in Nicaragua. Until our next episode, stay real, Queens, and go lead. Remember to tap that follow and leave your review. For freebies and more real, inspiring content you love, go to amysingleton.net and connect with Amy on her socials at @TheRealAmySingleton.
One more thing. This is the legal language, what my lawyer wrote and what I need to read to you. This podcast is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am Amy Singleton, and I'm just your friend. Although I may speak to many on this show, I am not a psychotherapist, a business coach, a doctor, a CPA, a lawyer, or probably anyone who should be giving you professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for a relationship with your doctor, coach, or any other licensed professional. Got it? Good. Now go be a queen and follow me at The Real Amy Singleton.